Welcome to the Town Tuesday edition of Go Go's Library. New Barktown, Winds of a New Beginning. New Barktown is located in southeastern Johto and is the hometown of the Johto player character. It is home of the lab of Professor Elm, who possesses the first partner Pokemon for Johto, Chikorita, Cyndaquil, and Totodile. Other than being connected to Route 29 in the west, it is also the only town that must be passed through to reach Tojo Falls, Victory Road, and Indigo Plateau via Route 26 and Route 27. When interacting with walking Pokemon in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the Pokemon may occasionally show an altered mood specific to this location. Outdoors, the walking Pokemon feels a breeze and stares intently at the sky. It can be surprised by a flower petal or a leaf on its pace, and sometimes sneezes. Player's House. Standing near the player's mom, the walking Pokemon greets her and shows concern for her. Player's Bedroom. The walking Pokemon sings happily. Friend's Bedroom. The walking Pokemon wants to play with Meryl, even if Meryl is not in the room. Professor Elm's Lab. The walking Pokemon fidgets in front of everyone and stares intently at the player's face. Points of interest. Player's House. In Generations 2 and 4, this house is where the player lives before beginning their journey. The player's mother lives here, and after the player has left town for the first time, she will save money if the player wishes and occasionally buys decorations for the bedroom or items such as super potions. The player's bedroom is a bit fancier than Red's bedroom in red, blue, and yellow. In Generation 2, unlike Red's room, it can also be customized to include several Pokemon dolls, as well as other decorations like beds, game systems, and carpets. The town map hangs on the wall can also be replaced with one of several posters of different Pokemon. However, in Generation 4, this feature is not included. The player starts their game in their bedroom in front of their PC and radio. The PC in the top left corner of the room in Generation 2 has a few important purposes, but unlike in Generation 1's bedroom computer, it does not contain an item. In Generation 4, the PC is restricted to viewing the player's mail, and the mailbox in the beginning of the game contains a single letter composed by Lyra or Ethan if the player is a boy or girl respectively. Professor Elm's Lab. Professor Elm's Laboratory is a Pokemon research lab that lies right next to the western entrance of New Barktown. Professor Elm works in his laboratory with his aide, usually doing experiments concerning Pokemon eggs and breeding. Here, Pokemon trainers just beginning their quest are given their choice to receive either a Chikorita, a Cyndaquil, or a Totodile from Professor Elm. Inside is one aide of Professor Elm's, a couple of shelves full of books, a table with 3 Pokeballs, a capsule in Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, a computer, and a few tips for the player. There is also a machine here that has the ability to fully rest/restore all Pokemon in the player's party, just like a Pokemon Center. Elm's aide gives the player 1 Gold, Silver, and Crystal, or 5 in Heart Gold and Soul Silver potions when leaving the lab for the first time. At the beginning of the game, a red-haired young man can be seen looking through the window into his lab. If spoken to, he will kick people out of the way and then continue to spy upon the lab. In Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Professor Elm's lab has an upstairs living area. His house from Gold, Silver, and Crystal has now become the home of Ethan or Lyra. Anime appearances. In the Pokemon series, New Barktown is the hometown of Jimmy, Vincent, Casey, Lyra, and top coordinator Marina. In Pokemon the series Gold and Silver, New Barktown debuted in Don't Touch That Dial, where Ash and his friends visited the laboratory of Johto's leading Pokemon expert, Professor Elm. The group also helped get Professor Elm's Totodile back from Team Rocket, who had tried to steal it. After Ash had registered for the Johto League, the group headed for Violet City for Ash's first Johto gym battle. New Barktown reappeared in Hatch Me If You Can, where Delia and Professor Oak boarded a ship to meet up with Professor Elm at the town's port. Ash and his friends later returned to the town after Ash had earned all 8 Johto badges, allowing him to register for the Silver Conference. Afterwards, they headed for Mount Silver to return the newly hatched Larvitar to its home before the Silver Conference. Trivia. Despite appearing to be further away from Johto-Kanto border on the Pokegears map, the player house is 7 steps from the border with Route 27 10 steps closer than the Pokemon Center at Mount Silver is to Route 28, thus making it the closest fly destination to the border. Out of all towns where the player starts, it is the only one not to have a connecting route to the north, but instead to the east and west. It is also the only starting town that the player must pass through again after gaining their 8th badge on their way to the Indigo Plateau. In Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, at some point during the player's journey, the first partner Pokemon in Elm's lab that wasn't chosen by the player or stolen by the rival disappears without explanation, although it is hinted to have been given to somebody else. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, when selecting a first partner Pokemon to receive at Elm's lab, it is possible to see whether each Pokemon is shiny before committing to the decision. However, the shiny status, if any, is not retained for the Pokemon that is later stolen by the rival. In the demo of Pocket Monsters 2 shown off at the Nintendo Space World in 1997, the initial town was not New Barktown, but rather a different town named Silent Hill, which may have actually been a prototype design of New Barktown. The town had a drastically different design, but may have been overhauled during the transition from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Color. Due to the first installment of the Silent Hill horror game series being released about 8 months prior to the actual Japanese release of Gold and Silver in early 1999, it may have possibly led to the rename as Wakabana Town. New Barktown is the only core series hometown to lack a resident exclaiming, "Technology is incredible," or a similar statement. Origins. New Barktown may correspond to the Shizuoka, the capital of the Shizuoka Prefecture. Notably, the name Silent Hill that appeared in the early demo in Nintendo Space World is a literal translation of Shizuoka. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for listening, and as always, be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next chapter of Go-Go's Library.